Jackie and Shadow finally have eggs, which is fantastic and also brings up the question of what's gonna happen to them, because there is a whole lot that goes on between now and the day these chicks hatch. So let's talk about it. First off, let me just say that bald eagle eggs are a bit particular. Each egg needs a very specific balance of warmth, airflow, humidity, and careful handling for roughly 5 weeks straight. And while you may think that's a little high maintenance, just think a human baby takes like 9 months of incubating, so if anyone's high maintenance, it's us. Jackie and Shadow will be running the system completely manually, which is kind of crazy impressive. They've got no thermostat, no backup power, just instincts, experience, and a lot of sitting down very, very carefully. Temperature is the biggest thing that they'll watch. Bald eagle eggs develop best when they're kept consistently warm, around 99 degrees Fahrenheit, which you can imagine in the winter can be a bit tricky. But here's the good news. Eagle eggs are actually pretty resilient when it comes to the cold, especially in early development. Early embryos can actually pause development when temperatures drop and resume once the egg warms back up. So if you see Jackie or Shadow stand up for a moment or leave the eggs briefly exposed to cool air, that does not automatically mean something is going wrong. Especially in the early days, that is more than okay. They need breaks too. Think of it as a moment where Jackie and Shadow say, "Okay, we're on hold, please enjoy this elevator music. We'll be right back to your regularly scheduled incubating." In fact, these brief breaks might actually be advantageous to keeping eggs healthy, because as I said, eggs need airflow and the right levels of humidity. As it would turn out, short airing out moments are completely normal and may even help prevent excess moisture buildup by allowing fresh air to circulate. So leaving the eggs exposed for a bit isn't always a bad thing, and it doesn't mean that Jackie and Shadow are neglecting them. Very often it could mean that there's some eagle HVAC maintenance going on. But at the end of the day, keeping those puppies warm is crucial for optimal development. And as we get closer to hatch day, there becomes less wiggle room in terms of temperature for Jackie and Shadow. In other words, the more developed the eggs get, the more vigilant Jackie and Shadow will have to be. So as the weeks draw on, they'll start incubating for longer periods and will probably appear more attentive during this late stage. And fortunately, these birds have just a few tricks up their sleeves on how to keep the eggs nice and toasty. Up their sleeves, up their feathers, I don't know. Quick disclaimer here that nobody knows the future. I base this video off of eagle research and eagle behavior, but at the end of the day, we can't say for sure what's going to happen. So just all of this is speculation. It's research speculation, but it's still speculation. A huge adaptation among birds to keep their eggs warm is something called a brood patch. We touched on this in an earlier video, so you might remember it. A brood patch is an area on their belly with fewer feathers and lots of superficial blood vessels. The result is an area of their body that stays really nice and toasty warm. Eagles press their brood patch directly against their eggs, and that skin-to-shell contact transfers heat very efficiently from the parent to the egg. Both Jackie and Shadow develop a brood patch, and interestingly, this is part of the reason why you'll see that slow, careful sit and settle move, where they shift and adjust before fully sitting down. Not only are they trying not to crush the eggs, but they're also lining up their brood patch with the eggs to ensure maximal and optimal heat transfer. Side note, am I the only person who gets just a little stressed watching Jackie and Shadow sit on their eggs? I mean, you've got something the size of a microwave sitting on essentially what is a fragile ping pong ball. Like, that's kind of stressful. That makes me anxious. Anyway, Jackie and Shadow can't just sit on the eggs and go to sleep during this time. In fact, incubating is a very active and precise process. They'll get up and turn their eggs frequently. They'll nudge the eggs with their beaks, roll them slightly, and reposition them, sometimes as much as multiple times per hour. This helps keep the embryo from sticking to the shell. It makes sure the egg is heated evenly and even improves gas exchange inside the egg. Then there's the nest itself. Not only have Jackie and Shadow spent years building and perfecting their nest to be cozy and warm, but they will continue to bring new material into it as the eggs incubate. This means they will be gathering up pine needles, grasses, and softer, warm materials even after the eggs are laid to continue shaping and insulating the nest bowl. So if there's one thing to take away from here, it's that egg care does not look like nonstop sitting and waiting and just relaxing. In fact, it's a constant adjustment. There's lots of micro movements, corrections, And to be honest, I'm really glad we don't have to do this because I can barely microwave a sweet potato properly. I mean, it's always too dry or not cooked enough. Anyway. So egg incubation is a delicate process, and even if Jackie and Shadow do everything right, there's still a lot that can happen in these next 5 weeks. So let's move into that next. Now that we understand how carefully balanced this whole egg incubation thing is, let's talk about the part that everyone really worries about, the threats. Or as I like to call them, the jerks of the wild, because let's be real, anybody who messes with Jackie and Shadow is kind of a dick. As much as we would like this to be true, the reality is those eggs are not going to be developing in a cozy, sheltered nursery. In fact, they're sitting in an open nest dozens of feet in the air with threats looming from virtually all sides. So let's start with the most notorious villain in the Big Bear saga, ravens. Unfortunately, these are not hypothetical threats. In 2021, one of Jackie and Shadow's eggs was destroyed by a raven during a short window when the nest wasn't fully protected. That moment alone taught us viewers a very important lesson, that it doesn't take long for things to go wrong. Ravens are extremely intelligent animals, and when it comes to eagle nests, they are prime strategists. They won't challenge a bald eagle head-on, that would be suicide, so instead they'll wait for moments of vulnerability. So if you're anything like me now, you're getting a little uneasy, so let's talk about how Jackie and Shadow are able to counter that. The biggest method for them is to be vigilant. This means having one parent stay in or close to the nest at all times. Sometimes it'll also mean taking to more aggressive defense when necessary. And one thing here is certain, Jackie and Shadow are fierce, brave, and diligent defenders of their nest. Then there's the weather. Snow, wind, rain, cold snaps. Big Bear gets all of it, sometimes in the same week. And while bald eagle eggs are more resilient than people might expect, weather still can make a big impact. As I mentioned earlier, eggs can tolerate brief periods of cooling and won't freeze instantly. But prolonged wet cold, strong winds, or storms can absolutely harm them. So some of this does come down to luck and hoping that it'll be a more mild winter. But fortunately, even if the weather is not on their side, Jackie and Shadow have a few more tricks up their sleeves, feathers, I don't know. They themselves have many strategies to stay warm and continue passing on their body heat to their eggs. So if you're curious about these things and what they are, I actually made a whole nother video on how Jackie and Shadow stay warm in the winter. Another threat that people don't always think about is intrusion by other eagles. Breeding age bald eagles will sometimes attempt to take over an active nest, especially in high quality territories. So this means that Jackie and Shadow aren't just guarding eggs, in fact they're guarding real estate. And then there's human disturbance, which is why protected areas like Big Bear Valley are so important. Bald eagles are especially sensitive during egg laying and early incubation. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has long emphasized that this period is one of the most vulnerable times in the nesting cycle. This is because disturbance can cause adults to fly from their nest, break incubation rhythm, or even abandon the nest entirely. And unlike ravens or the weather, this is one threat that the eagles can't fight back against, but we can. Distance and protection by us are the only real defenses. And then there's the quietest threat of all, the one that nobody likes to talk about, but is sometimes a very real and unfortunate reality. Sometimes eggs just don't hatch. Even with perfect incubation, some eggs may just fail. Sometimes the egg wasn't properly fertilized, and other times the embryo just doesn't develop properly. It's not a parenting failure, it's just biology doing what biology does. Now, I do want to say that I'm not going into all these threats to scare us, but rather to shine some light on how remarkable and resilient Jackie and Shadow truly are. They have faced all these threats year after year, but still, last year, Sunny and Gizmo grew up and fledged happy and healthy. Jackie and Shadow have had beautiful success, and it was no accident. It was a direct result of their incredible determination, strength, and refusal to give up, and that deserves pointing out. When you think about how amazing these birds are in that sense, it is no wonder so many people have fallen in love with Jackie and Shadow. So yes, there are a lot of things working against them this nesting season, but there is also one big thing really working in their favor. And that is Jackie and Shadow are two strong, experienced parents who know this nest, know this territory, and have already proven they are both committed and capable of defending it. Which brings us to the last question of this video, and one that I'm sure everybody has been waiting for. When are these eggs gonna hatch? Alright, now that we've covered how fragile this whole process is, as well as everything actively trying to mess it up, let's talk about the question that everyone wants answered. When are we gonna get cute little fuzzy eaglets? Well, once a bald eagle egg is laid, the clock starts. Incubation typically lasts between 34 and 36 days, give or take. But here's an important detail, each egg runs on its own timer. Eggs are usually laid several days apart, and because of this, they will also tend to hatch several days apart. So if Jackie lays egg number 1 and then egg number 2 comes 2 to 4 days later, you can bet that egg number 1 is going to hatch first. And as hatch time comes, things don't just explode into action all at once either. Eagles don't just pop out of their egg like a toaster pastry. The first big sign is something called a pip. Pip, I love that word. It is a tiny crack or hole that the chick makes in the shell using a temporary structure on its beak called an egg tooth. Once pipping starts, it can take 24 hours or more for the chick to fully hatch, sometimes even longer. And this is the part where, if you're anything like me, you lose your mind because progress is slow and you can't really see a whole lot of what's happening. During this stage, Jackie and Shadow won't stop incubating. They'll stay close and continue adjusting the egg as needed. All the while, the chick will be doing the hard work from the inside. And finally, once the chick does emerge, it doesn't pop out looking like a majestic bald eagle, but more like a damp cotton ball. Hatchlings are completely helpless. Their eyes are mostly closed, they've got no temperature regulation, they don't even really have an ability to sit up properly. So from that moment on, the nest dynamic shifts fast. Feeding begins, Jackie and Shadow become even more vigilant about their little ones, and the tiny eaglets begin to grow. And then what happens? Well, we'll talk about that too, but it will be in another video when the time comes, so be sure to subscribe down below so that you don't miss that. Best of luck to Jackie and Shadow, the whole world is rooting for you. Thank you so much for watching, I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.